Welcome to episode 2 of the Kyero Pro Podcast. I'm Martin Dell, one of the co-founders of Kyero.com, and with me is my co-host, Alfredo Bloy Dawson. How you doing, Alfredo?
I'm good. Thank you, Martin.
Now, and for those who don't know you, what qualifies you to be here?
Oh, very little. I'm a marketing consultant. I work with agencies. I've done since 2012, mostly to do with marketing and lead gen and stuff like that. Probably worked with over 100 agencies over the years and seen all the issues that they tend to have on the ground.
Today, we're talking about lead sources. Where do agents get leads from? The good, the bad, the ugly, what to do with them, what works, what doesn't work. And we're hoping to leave agents with some practical tips of what they can do to make more of their lead sources and go and find better leads.
Correct. And I think the point here is maybe we should define, this sounds like we shouldn't need to do this, but I think we do. And what do we mean by leads, Martin?
Well, from a portal point of view, it's a warm contact, I think. But I think from an agent's point of view, it's something else. How would your clients typically define that?
Well, the less experienced ones would think of it as someone that has got a bag of money and wants to buy the thing you have. More experienced agents would know that it's someone that has intention to buy. They have expressed interest in something that you have and something that you're selling, and that they're expecting you to some degree or other to get back in touch with them with some information. I think that would be certainly the agents that I've dealt with expectation.
Yeah, there was a marketing guy I dealt with years ago, Dean Jackson. He had a podcast, I'm not sure if it's still going, called I Love Marketing. And he just defined a lead as somebody that puts their hand up and says, I'm interested.
I like your way. It's a lot more elegant than my long description.
So we're going to look at various lead sources today. We won't have time to do a deep dive into any of them, but if there's any that you're currently working or you want us to do a deep dive on, let us know in the comments and we can circle back and do that. From your point of view, Alfredo, what's the sort of common theme behind all of lead gen? What's the takeaway that agents need to know?
But I think the key word is for agents to have in mind is intent. And by intent, I mean intention to buy. The question you ask any lead source, because I'm sure agents are bombarded on a daily basis from every weird and wonderful person and company trying to sell them this idea that they're going to get great leads. The thing they have to ask themselves is, what's the degree of intent on these leads? And you can ask the person supplying those leads or the platform or whatever it is. Are they actively looking for what I have, or are they psychographically or demographically targeted, as in they look like the sort of person that might want to buy something and they're not doing it? And the easiest way of explaining that, I would use an analogy such as like somebody looking to buy tennis balls. You could someone searches for tennis balls and you show them tennis balls, there's intent. Now, tennis balls maybe only cost £10 or €10. So I could psychographically put it in front of somebody that may not be looking for tennis balls, but may be swayed by my amazing tennis balls. And because it only costs £10, I could convince them on a platform to make a purchase. And that's what the mistake a lot of lead suppliers make, is you can't really convince someone that's not really planning on buying a house to suddenly spend £500,000 on a house that they weren't planning on buying. It doesn't really work that way. So the level of so you're looking at lead sources that have degree of intent, whether they're actively looking for something or they're in a place that you can reasonably assume that they're there to buy something.
Yeah, totally. I mean, while you were talking, I was thinking of the intent of somebody that shows up at a property exhibition. They're not there for the coffee. Well, another really good example of that is the property shows in the UK. A Place in the Sun, I've got an exhibition and a TV program. And I was surprised at the low conversion rate from the people that watch the TV program that go to an exhibition or go on the website. And I think the reason, again, is intent. I might be watching a TV program for entertainment. I might not actually be in the market.
When Facebook first started doing ads, we were all over it. And we found something weird that happened was that if you could generate leads for like €1 for a €10 million villa versus £2 or €2 for a €200,000 apartment. And we thought, how odd that the higher the ticket price, the better, the more leads we got for less money. And then we realized it was mostly just property porn. Question for you, Martin, being from a major portal that's been doing this forever. What we're talking about here is the entry point of the leads, because am I right in saying that you probably would the actual process from lead to sell will be multi-channel, and sometimes there's a combination of these different sources?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's probably one of the it's not a revolutionary takeaway. It's not new news, but it's one of the hardest things to do, which is to, however you get the lead, whatever the lead source, is to have some kind of a funnel, have some kind of a nurture process, because this is at least a multi-month buying cycle. You need multiple touch points for any lead that you get into your sales funnel. It's not enough to get their phone number, get their email address, bombard them with, when are you going to buy? When are you going to buy? When are you going to buy? Because they'll go away. So you sort of need to go, what stage are you at? Are you ready? What do you need from me at the moment? And I think, somebody that comes in via, let's say, an email lead or a Google ad lead, you sort of need to keep going back to them, maybe with some remarketing on another channel to go, hey, remember us? We're still here. Maybe now you've moved down the process a bit and you need a buyer's guide, or you need a guide to Marbella or Puerto Banús. Or I think offering these kind of little cookies as a way of getting engaged again is just accepting the reality of, we're all busy people. We've all got other things to do. And if I'm buying a property in Spain, I've probably got a reasonably successful life going on somewhere else that enables me to fund that. I've got other things to do, and you sort of need to stay in their faces without being too onerous. Is that your experience?
Yeah,
too?
100%. I mean, what we're covering here really is like the what we might call the follow-up, but really it's the full sequence of nurturing the lead from being a lead to being a customer. And quite often, we talk about a 1% conversion rate from lead to sale, and that's the same thing that I think Think Spain uses, and I used in Google Ads consulting as a sort of an average. And when you talk about an average, it means there's some above it and some below it, right? That's not the number; it's the average. And my experience is that with agencies is that the difference between a 1% conversion rate and a 5% conversion rate is in the follow-up. And the same agent with the same lead source and the same same everything else, same product, the difference is the follow-up, and that's a 5x difference. It doesn't sound like a lot when you say it's 4% more conversion than 1%, but it's a 5-time better result, and it's huge. And that comes down to the process that they have of identifying which are the buyers that they need to concentrate on, that are serious and that are interested, and identifying where they are in the process of buying, and then doing an appropriate follow-up that doesn't harass them but doesn't ignore them. And that's really hard, and that takes a lot of skill. But we'll cover that I think we got the last episode of this podcast is the follow-up one, which is going to be the meaty one, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's the whole game right there. And as you say, to go to 5x your conversion rate, you still have to have the mindset of throwing away 95% of those leads or continuing to nurture them for the future. But if an agent can make it work, make the business work with a 1% conversion rate, imagine what a 5x that will do.
Yeah, and from my experience, the numbers do stack up. It's no fun for the person doing the telemarketing if they have such a person, but the numbers, even at 1%, it stacks up, because the commissions are quite high, especially in parts of Spain like the Costa del Sol and the Costa Blanca. So it's not like the UK where they're trying to split a 1% between two agents or something like that. They're talking 5, 6, 7%. Even when they split it, they're like with 2 or 3. So the money is the numbers do stack up, but the process for an agent, particularly inexperienced agents, it can be painful.
My experience in the UK buying and selling property for myself is that a good agent makes all the difference in the process. And like we said last week, that process of nurturing a lead, really the agent has got multiple opportunities to demonstrate that they're the right agent. Everybody's got the same product, more or less, but the difference an agent can make in the content and the method of their follow-up is really just demonstrating, when you're ready to buy a property in Spain, I'm your guy. or girl. So we're actually going to look at 10 different lead sources, some in more depth than others. And clearly on a podcast like this, we haven't got time to go into depth in any of them. But I think this is a really good way of setting the scene for where do leads come from and which ones should we focus on as an agent. So we're starting with an agent's own website and the value of SEO. And we'll be doing a deep dive into SEO, I think in episode 3 or 4. Anyway, portals. Clearly, I've got something to say about portals, and again, how SEO affects a portal business. Google Ads, pay-per-click, social media, YouTube, exhibitions, in-person events. What do they look like? Are they still in the part of the mix? Webinars and other ways of getting somebody to hold their hand up. If you've got a physical office, what about people that walk in? How do you encourage that? You might be part of a network where partner agents are referring buyers to you or other franchises. Email marketing to your own database. What does that look like and who's it good for? And then we'll touch on AI as a referral engine and whether that's got any meat in it. Is there anything I've missed there, Alfredo?
No, you got it. You nailed it.
So let's dive in and look at an agent's own website. It's clear that an agent has to have a website, if for no other reason than to refer people back to and maybe to have a bit more of a presence on the internet. What about an agent's own website as a lead source, Alfredo? When have you seen that work and not work? Who's it good for?
Oof. I mean, like you said, everybody needs one. As a lead source, the conversion rate from visit to lead on most websites that I've seen over the years, we're talking about 0.5%. You know what I mean? So it's a very low conversion rate. Typically, the lead quality, depending on where your traffic is coming from, let's assume it's organic traffic coming from people searching for what you have and not some weird bot from Bangladesh. If the traffic's legit, then the conversion rates are pretty good because they basically the lead is doing all the work. The buyer's doing all the work. They've got a full repertoire. It's like walking into a big supermarket and they can choose anything they want. And so by the time they've done all the work, half the work for the agent already. So by the time they inquire, even though the number of leads are low, the conversion rate are quite high. However, back in the day, you could keyword stuff an agent's website, get them to number page 1 of Google within 3-4 months, and it would generate a ton of leads. That's changed. It's very difficult to have it as a reliable source of leads, and the only agents that I see these days doing well with that are either the ones that have been around for a long time, so their website has a lot of traction, or the ones that hire professional SEO agencies to optimize it for them on an ongoing basis. And I think we're going to talk about this in a deep dive on episode 5, but really the thing is that you have two sides of SEO from an agent perspective, and you know this way better than I do from a larger perspective, and that is the technical SEO, meaning that your website is discoverable, and then you have the ongoing SEO, which is normally linked to some sort of content strategy and touches a whole bunch of other things. And from my experience in Spain, at least, and particularly the south of Spain, there's probably 1 or 2 companies that do this successfully, and it costs a lot of money. And the hack for an agent on this is if it costs you $99 a month, it ain't gonna work. And if they've not got experience, the one question I would say for an agent considering hiring an SEO agency to be able to generate organic traffic to the website so they can get leads from the website, which they would see as free leads, but if you're paying somebody for SEO services, it's not a free lead. You still have a cost per lead attached to it. But the one question would be, ask them for a reference. You want to find another agency in the same market that you're in, not in another country, not even in another part of Spain. Wherever you're in Spain, you want someone that's currently ranking well for the sort of thing that you want to rank well, and you want to be able to get that reference because it's the biggest black hole of money. And because it does legitimately take time to do correctly. Even worse than Google Ads, or at least you're generating traffic from day 1. This is like day 6 months later, still trying to rank. And the second or third thing I would say as an agent hack is, I shouldn't be using the word hack, but is you can buy the traffic through Google Ads to see whether once you get that traffic, how does your website convert? Because you might generate a bunch of organic traffic, and and it takes 10,000 visits to get an inquiry. And also whether there's any volume for that. 'Cause just because you rank well for townhouses and X village doesn't mean there's anybody actually looking for that. So that's quite a common thing. You'll get a report from the SEO agency saying, "Oh, look, you've ranked number one and all these things," and then when you finally do and you're successful, if you're lucky, then you find out nobody's actually looking for that stuff. So that would be the second thing, I think, from an agent website perspective. Is it worth it? Hell yes, it is worth it. Is it still relevant? It is. It's a lot harder than it has ever been. And even if you rank, when we say organic, we're talking about a non-paid ads, so on the Google results. On the organic results, they're getting harder to spot because there's a ton of ads, and then you have the property portals that have way more resources than most agencies that have been around forever, ranking after them on the organic spots. Your Kyeros and Idealistas and stuff like that. And then the final point I would say is an agency should ask themselves, especially a new agency, is if Google does its job properly and delivers the results that the user deserves, why in the hell would it pick your website if you've only been here 10 minutes over 10,000 other websites that have been around for a while and there's a bit of history and a bit of authority? And that's the mindset change that's had to happen over the last decade, which is you can't easily blag your way to page one. And even when you get to page one isn't what it used to be. So that's my view on it. What's your thoughts on what I just said? And how does it work with a portal? That's the next lead source, I guess, is on your list is portals, isn't it? So
Yeah. And as we touched on last week, portals generate leads to fill the top of the funnel. We're less concerned about conversion. Eventually we want to convert the traffic to leads, but then we hand over the lead to the agent to convert the lead to a sale. So we're more top of funnel kind of focus when it comes to SEO or paid ads. But I agree with you. 20 years ago, keyword stuffing worked. It's counterproductive now. Just to give you a really kind of small snippet of what's changed over 20 years. It was incredibly easy to game the system 20 years ago. It's impossible now and counterproductive. And I think the other thing that I've seen happening with SEO, we're doing a deep dive in episode 4 on SEO, and we'll get an expert in rather than me waffling about our experience, is that the rate of change of organic traffic, the stuff you have to do to keep up in Google, is changing so quickly and so insidiously. It's possible to keep up with it, but it's expensive and hard work. Like you're saying, if it's costing you 99 euros a month to play the SEO game, save your 99 euros because it's not working. And I think going back 20 years, organic was this magic money tree. You kind of got free traffic and it was, wow, this is a great business model. Now, as a new business, I like you said, I would look at organic versus paid ads and go, I'm going to be paying either way, probably a similar amount. One might well be an ongoing source of traffic and the other one stops as soon as I turn the money off. But this one's predictable, paid pay-per-click. This one's really unpredictable and it will change and I will have to spend more money on it in the future.
would it be fair to say, with your knowledge, whilst we're still segueing from websites to portals, that it depends, the really easy other thing for an agent to be aware of, it depends of what your market is. Like if you're in a fairly small, non-competitive marketplace that has a lot of demand for it and is very underserved by your competition in terms of technology and websites and so on, then you got a good shot at it by just doing the right thing. You still have to do all the right things. But if you're in somewhere like Marbella, for argument's sake, or somewhere, Palma de Mallorca, that's when it really is kind of like okay.
Yeah. Well, how many agents have you got active on the Costa del Sol that might be competing for the same kind of eyeballs?
5,000. You include bedroom agents with their websites. Everybody has a website, so yeah.
Yeah. The odds aren't good, are they? And especially, as you say, now that the true organic listings are, I don't know, second page, but the 10th result onwards, and that's going to get worse. And what with ChatGPT announcing that they're going to be serving ads on the free versions of their platform, there are going to be more and more ads before any organic listing, and that's we'll get to whether AI engines work as a referral engine later on, but we're moving to a world where if you don't pay for the traffic, you don't get any.
Yeah, I mean, the phrase we used to use was "you got to pay to play," and I think it sounds a bit cheesy, but it kind of sums it up, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
One way or another, you're paying.
My kind of summary for an agent's website is you need it for credibility, but it's either going to be expensive or a long-term play to make it work as a lead source.
I would add to that doesn't mean you shouldn't get the technical SEO right on the website. Do you know what I mean? As a minimum, so it needs to be findable.
The other thing that a domestic estate agent could rely on is kind of the local business, the local listing, and that stuff in Google. But unfortunately, it just doesn't work for an international buyer, is it? They're not looking for that sort of local presence. So portals as a lead source. Clearly, I'm incredibly biased on this topic. But why don't you give us an overview of what it looks like from a market perspective and what agents should be looking at?
Who is it perfect for? Well, I mean, it's quite obvious when you think about it, at least from my point of view. If you have listings, it's a marketplace. So if you have listings, that's where you're going to put your listings. So who is it for? Normally, in most cases, it's for agencies that have listings. The more it's a numbers game. The more listings you have, the better it works. If you get one lead because you got 10 listings and you get 10 because you got 100, etc., it's as simple as that. It's logical, I want to get the market that I'm serving is the Scandinavian and British and European market, for argument's sake. Does this portal produce leads from those places is the question. And if it does, then let's try it.
Yeah, I think that's a fair summary. I mean, clearly portals that are going to work for you, they work because they've got traffic. And instead of showing somebody else's property, you show their property and then you get the lead. So I think the first thing is finding a portal with traffic. And then you're right, you can dip in and out and experiment with what works there. And as well as the number of listings, what I've seen work is the variety of listings. So you've got kind of like the supermarket thing. You can attract different buyers with different listings. Easier said than done, I know. It's probably worth mentioning where portals typically aren't strong. And, I'll hold my hand up here. We can generate leads for rental properties all day, but typically that's a tough conversion for an agent from somebody out of country interested in renting a property. By the time they get there, the listing's gone and everybody feels bad about that. But rentals as a way into generating a lead, that I think that's worth us talking about at some other point. New builds are hard to generate a lead for just because everybody's got the same product. Developers do a good job of promoting the development, but not the individual listings. And most portal platforms are not good at promoting the development. They're good at promoting the individual listings, and they all look the same. If you start filtering for new builds, you end up with pages and pages of the same listing, and buyers just don't engage.
It's a marketplace. I always try to say this to agents is that, almost think of it like an eBay. If you can, I know this might be like I might be insulting you right now, but you're buying what the portal needs to deliver is the eyes of the people that you want on it, which in the example of eBay it does. And then if I want to sell something, I don't get mad at eBay if it doesn't sell because it's just either the product is wrong, the presentation is wrong, or there's no demand for it, or the price is wrong. So if you can start with the first entry point being, yes, they have the traffic, yes, they have the eyes, which may be harder for agencies to know than me saying it, then the rest is on you a little bit, then it's to see whether, whether at this product, at that price, it works. Now, it's an experience. It was a established portals, there is a thing that happens with agencies, which is, some portals work sometimes for some agencies and stop working for a while and they start working again. And from my experience, it's generally a lot simpler than what anybody tries to make it. It's just related to your portfolio. If you got a bunch of good, if what you're left with after the post-COVID shopping spree is all the stuff nobody wants, it's going to generate very few leads. That's my view.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I mean, from our point of view, the agencies that work for us and have paid us for 20 years are the ones that go, this is a long game. We obviously need the product, but we also need to work hard to describe it, photograph it, translate it. It's not rocket science.
There's probably 100, 200 portals to choose from. There's probably 3 or 4 or 5 that you should really be shortlisting.
Yeah.
If you serve with the international buyer market. The other thing I should say is that if you're working in a niche, so you only sell to Belgian buyers, then there'll probably be some different portals that serve that market, as well as some of the broader ones like a Kyero that serves all the international market. But aside from those who are super specialists, there really is only 4 or 5, if that agents that would make it to the short list of qualifying to have the traffic from the countries that they want. And then even if they have the traffic, and no portal is going to tell you this, but it's what quality is that traffic? Because you might try Facebook ads for argument's sake as an agency and find that you haven't been able to convert any of those leads. So you go in a portal, and then unknown to you, the portal is generating all its leads through Facebook ads.
Yeah.
So, it isn't easy for an agency, I don't think. But I think to eliminate that first barrier of portals are good. If you have listings and you're not advertising in portal, you're probably missing a trick. What about new portals? What can you say to an agent as a tip? Obviously, you're maybe biased because you're from an established portal, but what would be your advice to an agent that receives an email saying, we're a brand new portal, we're going for the luxury side or whatever, Averitt, give us some money? What would you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, if you think of an agent website as a sort of a new agent website and how difficult it is to get traffic to that, a new portal has exactly the same problem. They might have more money to invest in getting traffic, but unless it's an established domain name, and even then, even if it's an old domain name that they've transferred to the portal, it's difficult and expensive to get traffic to that domain. So I think as an agent, I would be looking for evidence of traffic up front. And as you've said, as you've touched on, if an agent's got experience of buying Facebook traffic and not converting it, I would want to know where the traffic sources are for the new portal. Because as you say, if I'm buying Facebook traffic and then basically reselling it to you, well, it's not going to be any better probably than you just buying that traffic directly. And it might be cheaper for you to do that than pay me to do it for you. Going back to your initial question or your initial point about intent, the great thing about portals, and you're right to draw the simile to eBay and marketplaces, is it's a classified ad site, but the content is the advert. People are there for the adverts. And in a world where advertising is kind of a dirty word and it's sneered at, I think the amazing thing about a classified marketplace is that people are there to look at the adverts. So the intent is high. It's a sort of a slightly diluted version of somebody walking into a property exhibition. So the intent is already there just because there's traffic. Then we can argue about the source of the traffic and the degree of intent there. But some of the people on a property portal are there for property portal and they're mooching around and they're looking at the pictures. But by the time that person's made an inquiry, they're definitely putting their hand up and going, I'm not sure, but I'm kind of interested in this. And that's a big step ahead from somebody that clicks a button on a Facebook ad.
Yeah, I mean, we used to call it, if someone's on a portal, there is a assumed intent, just the fact that they're on the portal.
Yeah. So, Alfredo, I know we've both had experience of agents with a small or non-existent property portfolio. And it's really hard for a portal to perform for those agents. In those situations, what do you recommend to an agent?
Trying to keep life simple for an agent watching or listening to this. If you're not on a portal, you're on Google Ads. That's the majority of agencies. You might be on both.
And I know that game has evolved massively. When you're advising clients about putting money into Google Ads, what's the big picture there?
The big picture is that if you can't convert website or portal leads into sales, you're not going to be able to convert Google Ads leads. Typically, you have to have Google Ads works for agencies, you have to have a much bigger budget. So if you're not got, I'm going to generalize here because we have got episode 4 we go into it, but if you've not got a couple of grand to spend on Google Ads a month, you're going to be spending most of your money on the person you hire to do the Google Ads for you and not on the ads itself. So it takes so bloody long to get anything done and get any results and be able to convert and know if it's any good. Similarly to the first point about the own website and the SEO, at least on the Costa del Sol where I'm based, there's probably 2 people that I know that I would recommend, or maybe 3, to do Google Ads for you. So there's a real shortage of skilled Google Ad lead gen experts that can do it for you correctly. Now you find a bit like with the SEO thing, and a bit like the portal, and I think this is a theme that runs through it. If you're dealing with someone that is currently doing it and has got a lot of experience in getting leads that agents can sell to, then the second element is the infrastructure for follow-up from an agent. And here you're directly paying for this traffic, and it's not cheap. The infrastructure for follow-up has to be the best. I mean, if it's not great and you're not really using a CRM and your follow-up is a little bit like whatever, then it's not for you, in my simple opinion on this. And then the final thing I would say is it doesn't really work with particularly well on some parts of the market, such as the high end.
Interesting. Is it feasible for an agent to sort of DIY the process for Google Ads now, or is it too complicated, or how has that changed?
Not for lead gen. If you're doing a bit of retargeting or a bit of brand, a bit of that, yeah. But Google Ads will convince you that you can do it yourself, and it has all these little buttons that will auto switch on for you to just spend your money, and you will nearly always find out that you just blown 10 grand and it's not worked. So it makes it very difficult. It makes it very difficult. You have to turn off all the autopilot, to put it simply, and everything. All the buttons are flashing. You go, no, you don't want to do this. And it's not that they're trying to scam you or something. It's just that works well for tennis balls. But we're talking about houses here. So in that sense, you kind of do it yourself. Do it yourself. No, so you have to pay somebody. There's only a few people that are good at it, so they're not going to be cheap. And so for that cost per lead equation, you're going to have to add their fees on top of it. Does it work? Yes. Is it good do agencies make a lot of money and have been doing it for years? Yes. Is it for everybody? Absolutely not. It's a very specialist thing. And it typically is what you have to do if you're dealing with off-plan as your only source of inventory.
In my business group a while ago, somebody was looking for an a pay-per-click consultant. And I was about to chip in with the people that we use because we spend a fair bit of money. And somebody else in the group asked the original person, what's your budget? And he said, eventually it came back and said, yeah, we'll probably spend 2 to 3 million a year on pay-per-click. I was like, okay, that's serious money.
Be careful before you start, I think would be my advice. But again, we'll go into more detail on the episode on that one.
Yeah. And I think the last thing that I would add on pay-per-click is when you find something that works, you find a sort of a mechanism that works. The next challenge is, does it scale? Because the temptation is once you've found something that works, just to pile more money behind that. But then there seems to be a glass ceiling of how much volume that can drive.
The stuff that once the person did the lead gen for you gets some results for you, you can't just say, okay, well, 10x the budget and let's get 10x the results. There's a law of diminishing returns, very visible, particularly on search, where people are looking for stuff. Yeah. And generally what the supplier needs to do is needs to start broadening the level of intent to give you more volume. So it becomes less and less relevant, and therefore becomes harder and harder for the agent to convert. So you kind of passing the problem on to the team.
So that brings us to social media, sites like YouTube, other sites that I'm not at all familiar with. The only time I ever look on Instagram is when Louise is showing me pictures of cats doing daft things. You have far more experience of social media marketing than me, Alfredo. What's your big picture summary of that?
Big picture summary would be there are easier ways of getting and converting leads. The 3 that we just mentioned, probably portals or Google Ads. I would say if it's paid or even organic, for brand, fantastic, and it makes a lot of sense. And I think as lead generating, I guess the same thing you might do with Google Ads, where you do the landing page and you sort of saying, buy this property. Historically, the conversion rate is about 10 times less than from Google Ads. And I'm just generalizing here because it depends on a lot of things. But I would say asterisk, it's changing a bit. And if you take it more than lead gen, I think the final thing I would say on it at this stage, would be rather than lead gen, think demand gen. And by that, I mean you establish yourself as an authority in what you're doing, you build a network, and then they come to you. But it's less marketplace, less product driven, and more trust driven.
And that probably comes back to the intent theme, doesn't it? That I'm on Facebook, I'm looking for cat videos and what my friends are doing. I might be in the market for a property and I might respond to a sassy post, but I might not be there for that at all.
Does it work? Yes. Is it easy to put your kettle on and say, okay, I want 20 leads a week from this? No, in my experience. So there are easier ways to generate leads if what lead generation is what we're talking about here.
One sort of story from a Kyero perspective is because we're a portal and we're specializing on international buyers, we're quite often featured in the Times on Sunday for, hey, you can buy this in Marbella for, I don't know, less money than you can buy this in West London for, and they're comparable properties. And we're regularly in the Times on Sunday for, some property somewhere. It makes no difference to the traffic we get to the website, zero. So I kind of see social media a bit like that. It's nice, it's good branding, it's good top of funnel stuff, but it's really hard to convert.
Yeah, and there are particularly there are agencies that specialize in off-plan. Let's just say this as it is. There's agencies that specialize in off-plan. There's quite a few of them, and I've worked with a bunch. And they are Google Ads people. They're not portal people because I don't have any listings. And they're not in social at all. They don't exist anywhere. Their brand is not known on the street. You ask another agent, hey, how about these people? And they've never heard of them. Their relationship is with developers, not with other agents. So there's no reason for anybody to know them, and there's no value in it. At least I don't think there's any value in establishing their brand. So you have these incredibly successful agencies operating on the new build off-plan basis that have zero social media, are not on portals, and you might not notice that they're actually huge players in the market. The portal type crowd with the listing agencies, they tend to sell their listings with involvement of another agency. The relationship is less with developers and more with other agents, and therefore their place in the market to get listings from sellers that are local, there's more that they have to be known on the street. They have to have a brand visibility. They have to have that relationship with other people, and they have to be better known. So it is a different set of elements to the toolkit, if you like, depending on where your specialty is.
That's a good point, actually. So maybe look at the socials more as increasing your chance of getting a listing or getting a relationship rather than getting a buyer.
In some cases, advertising on a portal can be that, meaning the seller will say, well, why should I choose you to list my property? How are you going to promote this? This is an international market. I'm in Benahavis where 83% of all transactions are foreign. How are you going to reach all those American buyers and stuff? And in some cases, if you're not advertising in any portals because you think they don't work for you, and maybe they don't work for you at the moment because you only have 15 listings or something like that, and they're all expensive ones. In some cases, agencies have to be on the portal so they can say, look, this is where your stuff's going to be visible. And in fact, in many cases, that's what they end up using if the seller is a little bit over optimistic with the selling price, is proof that they're overpriced. Look, you've been on these three major portals. You've been on Kyero, Idealista, and somewhere else. Like I see here, you've had all these people have seen your listing, and you had no inquiries. You got to drop your price. So, or spend more money on interior design or better marketing materials or whatever. So there's more to it than meets the eye, just like you sort of suggested.
Okay.
So the next one in the list is what?
Exhibitions. A couple of years ago, I went to a property exhibition in London, and it was full of people, my demographic, grey hair or no hair. And I was really surprised by the eagerness of the people walking in the door to sign up for the keynote speakers and to get the how-to packs. I mean, these people had intent. And it was in some seedy hotel in London, so it wasn't the venue that was pulling these people in. They wanted the content. What's your experience of exhibitions and how good they are for generating leads?
I mean, exhibitions were the old school way of doing it, weren't they? Before Google Ads and portals were sort of just getting their finding their feet. Exhibit, you do go to, the old big agencies here in Augusta, so your Viva Estates and stuff like that. They would go to these exhibitions and sign up 5,000 people and sell to 500 of them, and it was all macro, big money, big success. That's for the blanket trips, get them over to do the tours and all that sort of thing. So that was like kind of when I started. That's what was happening. So in the UK, for example, the best known ones really are there's like 4 a year by A Place in the Sun that have the TV program as well. And I asked Andy Bridge, who's the CEO there. He knows that we're talking. This is the Kyero Podcast, but he's a cool guy, so he doesn't mind contributing to the info for the agents here. And I said to him, like, are they still working? Are they still successful? And okay, he would say they are, but he's a pretty straight talking guy, so I don't think he would necessarily contribute to the conversation if they weren't. And what he told me, I'm going to read this word for word. This is from Andy Bridge from A Place in the Sun. Events do still work. We're seeing more demand for stand space this year. So by demand for stand space, obviously it's from the people that do the exhibiting, like agencies and people who are in the area. Agents need leads from somewhere, and a number of them are prepared to commit the budget to attend a live event. He does say, though, however, exhibitions are not for everybody. You need to put in the preparation and commit before, during, and after the event. Gone are the days of hoping to grab a few eager buyers and sell them a property on the spot, which are the days I was just referring to, right? He said how it's changed is previously a number of agents focused on hoovering up as much contact data on site, so grabbing everybody's details. Now the focus is on quality. Which visitors you choose to spend your time with is key, qualifying them early in the conversation and then parking them if they seem some time off purchasing, while really working and establishing a connection with those who want to buy now. So he's basically saying it's gone from like big numbers and mass to really a bit more targeted. And then he says we see more relocators these days than pre-Brexit. More people looking to move to Spain. They often have additional questions and are in need of extra services such as visas and removals. So that's kind of what he's saying. So he's saying it is working. It has changed a bit because there's a bigger trend towards relocation. There's more of the service is a bit more 360 and is more consultative, and there's more information about moving, which kind of supports what you said, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that would be true of the UK in particular, wouldn't it? With the the whole Brexit fallout. Yeah. I mean, I can see them as being a really useful sort of stepping stone between getting a buyer out to Spain to do a viewing trip. They can kind of it's not the same, but they can kind of do the viewing trip without leaving their country. That it's sort of a halfway house. So I think intent is definitely there. But as Andy says, you can't just show up and hope to get something out of an exhibition. You need the people and the materials, and it's not a low cost option. When we get a visitor on the Kyero site, we have a number of ways that they can engage with us. Clearly we want them to make an inquiry, but we've got other things. They can sign up for a newsletter or download a guide. How well do those things work for an agent or from an agent's website?
I think they don't work particularly great, honestly, from an agent point of view, an agent doing it. I think what I have seen, and there's plenty of people who have been doing this for years, it also seems a little bit old school maybe, but is these sort of webinar things where organized by external companies like a Kyero, but not Kyero, that maybe organize these like a bit like the exhibition, but an online version where they have a lawyer and an immigration person and a mortgage broker, and they get a bunch of experts in a room. They get a whole bunch of potential buyers to sign up. They provide this information for free, and then they have them in their system, and then maybe they then resell those leads or otherwise. So as a source of leads for the lead seller, it's still done. From a direct agent point of view, being in it, I'm not aware of that really being a thing.
Okay. And again, it sounds like it depends on how good your follow-up mechanism after you get that lead.
I would say that it's a little bit like you said with yourself with portals. You getting those top of funnel people in, and then they work them, and then they pass them on at the right time. And I think that's exactly the same thing with these webinars.
Yeah, I mean, I think from my point of view, the downside of that is when one of the ancillary services like removals, legal, or currency is generating the lead, and it can be the tail wagging the dog.
The one thing I would say from an agent doing it, and I'm sure there are exceptions that have done a great job, is if it's not done professionally by a company that specializes in doing webinars, they're normally absolute rubbish, isn't it? The connections are bad. You can't hear anybody. The first 15 minutes is like, hey, Bob, can you hear me? It's an embarrassment. Most webinars I attend are terrible, and I end up leaving. And I'm quite interested in this sort of stuff. So I'd say if you're thinking of doing your own as a way of generating leads, by all means, try it. But like I said, with the other things, there are easier ways of generating leads.
Yeah, I agree. Now everybody's got a podcast. This one, no exception. The quality of it and the preparation for it, you can't just rock up with a microphone and hope it's going to work. So let's move on to the next one. I'm an established estate agent. I've got an office in the middle of town. How many people walk past my shop and see something in the window and walk in and buy? Does that work anymore? Am I getting passing traffic?
Some people do, but that is a bit of the old formula. Most agencies nowadays don't set up with intent of getting walk-by traffic. Now that may be different in smaller markets, little smaller towns where there's like a little town center and there's not much. It's a little bit underserved. Like even places like Mojácar, there's loads of offices. Mojácar and Almería, there's loads of like street office real estate agencies, and they do get walk-in traffic. So yes, it is still a thing. In more complicated markets like Marbella, where I am, most new agencies don't select an office on the basis of it being to generate walk-in traffic from people just browsing. So not really, but it depends where you are, I think is probably the answer.
So it's more like a website kind of thing. You sort of need it maybe you need it for credibility, but it's probably not a lead gen source.
I would say that's probably the most likely case, unless you're in a smaller town.
20 years ago, an agent's shop front was their lead gen source. If somebody's not walking past my shop, then I'm not going to deal with them. But now with the internet and online and all the stuff that's happening and the increase of international buyers, by definition, in the international market, the buyers are not walking past your shop. They are virtually, but they need to find you where they are, not where they are physically, where you are physically.
There's an argument to say that you should have an office, for credibility, for recourse, to be part of an association, that sort of thing. But there's lots and lots of individual agents operating along the coast that have no physical place. They work out of their bedrooms.
So one of the options for an estate agent is to join a network of agents or a franchise or some kind of network. And I know that the promise of those networks is that they will generate leads. They do the marketing for them. So as an example, as a portal, we've always found it difficult to sell to some franchises because they go, no, that's our job. We do the marketing. We don't want to give you money to do the marketing for us. That's our promise. And some agencies, some franchises get it completely and go, yes, we're going to generate leads by giving you money. How does it work from an agent's point of view? Can they just join a network and rely on that network to generate leads for them?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's as clear-cut as that. I think you have different types. I think you have agencies that are part of a franchise. You might have a, Coldwell Banker or Century 21 or Keller Williams or etc. And the assumption of joining that is not only getting credibility, but also you'll have internal referrals. That happens very successfully with, like, say, Savills internationally. A lot of their business is generated internally through the network that they have. This is especially relevant in the high end of the market. So the higher end of the market, there's much less about lead gen and much more about referrals, connections, whether it be because you're part of Knight Frank or because you have your own network. So that on the one side. On the separate side, I guess we could call it a referral network in a sense, is the MLSs. Most transactions of resale properties, the Costa del Sol and in many of the other areas, they involve more than one agent, i.e. the listing agent and somebody that has the buyer. And how that relationship occurs through what is called the multi-listing system in MLS, where you have a property database that's available. The people with the buyers can tap into that and get in touch with those agents to do the viewings, and they share the commission. So there's one thing that we probably should mention is that for listing agencies, quite often the vast majority of their sales and their leads they come from another agent that is doing the portals or doing the Google ads or doing whatever they're doing, and they have got the buyer and they are just basically supplying the listing. So that's a huge part of the market, which kind of is easy to forget. So you could, if you were looking to as a lead source, the very short answer to that would be, are you sharing your listings with other agents? And if not, there you go. That's an option.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I mean, the challenge from a portal point of view is getting the same listing multiple times from agents using the MLS, but that's a whole separate issue. But
Yeah.
it can make that particular listing look bad when it's, you get 10 of the same listings.
Yeah. I mean, that's the number one complaint that agents have about portals, and we'll touch on that on the portal episode, but it's, duplicate listings and wrong prices and stuff like that. And that is more of a problem in markets like the Costa del Sol, where everybody's sharing the listings, because they have permission to do it. It's not that they're doing anything wrong. If 10 agents can show their listing on a portal, then you're going to have that listing 10 times. And how do the portal decide? Who do they? It's another conversation, like you say, but it does make it messier. It's very good for the market, but it's not great for the buyer.
Yeah, I agree. It confuses buyers, and they started off confused, and that gets them more confused.
Yeah. There are also specialist mini MLSs, like there's a new one here called NLS, N for November, and that seems to be more looking at the sort of quality, small volume, and maybe tapping into the U.S. market. So there are markets within markets, but yeah, I think that's important for an agent to realize that if they're a listing agency, then one of their main sources of leads will probably be by collaborating with other agencies, either through an MLS or through making those relationships one-to-one in the areas where the MLSs are not present.
Associated with that, have you seen agents build a successful business just as a buyer's agent, or do they typically also need to find sellers and have listings of their own?
100%. Yes.
Okay.
I know a large number of agencies that have zero listings. There is also a thing that happens, and probably not for now, but there's a thing that happens that they start off by going with because we don't have any listings, we don't want any listings, and they then repackage that whole idea like being some sort of, because it's for the benefit of the buyer, where there's no conflict of interest. We'll sell you whatever. It's not, we're just trying to push our own listing. The thing you have to remember is that a buyer's agent, in the traditional sense of the word, is paid by the buyer, and then they're independent because they've got no skin in the game. When we talk about buyer's agents here, let's not forget the seller pays.
Yeah.
So if that listing has a 3% commission and that listing has 2.5%, there's still the potential for a conflict of interest, and that's just how it is. It's not that anybody's doing anything wrong, but just call it what it is.
So that's interesting, isn't it? There are various sort of flavors that an agent can follow. They can be a traditional listing agent with listings, say in the resales market, and then go and look for lead sources. There are agents focusing on new builds whose relationship is primarily with the developer, and maybe they'll skew towards paid ads. And then there are buyer's agents that would typically join a network, some kind of referral network.
And might also, they have it hardest really, because if they haven't got their listings, they can't really do portals. And if they're favoring resales, then they're not really going to do offline and Google ads and stuff like that. So yeah, they tend to be more in the high end or very small outfits, sort of one person outfits, where they just operate themselves. They look after 2 or 3 individuals at a time. And they tend to, or maybe they also sometimes work in partnership with some agencies, so they're independent, but they maybe are, I don't know, a Dutch speaker or something like that, and they will be given some leads by some agencies that they have relationships with. So they're kind of like the invisible agent network of freelancers, as we call them, that are as good as anybody else, and they're one-man bands or one-woman bands, and they kind of fall between the cracks of lead gen. It gets tricky when the challenge they have is that when their referrals dry up or they're having a quiet patch, it's very hard for them to pull a lever to get more leads, and then they might start investigating Google ads or portals, trying to figure out how to do it, and they don't quite have the infrastructure or the budget or the manpower or any of those sort of things. So they have it hardest when things are quiet, in my opinion.
So Getting to the end of the list now, Alfredo, what about email? How does that play a part in an agent's sort of mix of lead gen? I know it's not pure lead gen because you need the email address first to send them an email, but assuming you've got an email address and it's legitimate and they wanted to hear from you, what kinds of things can we do with email as an agent?
Most agencies, if we're talking about a 1, 2, 3% conversion rate from lead to sale from whatever source it is, that means that they got 90% of these people that they haven't sold to and they're trying to sell to. Some the thing to understand is that most leads that you don't sell to, you don't close the lead because they've told you, I am not buying, go away. Most just ghost. Is ghosting is the issue here, right? So you don't know whether they're a buyer or not. They inquired. You assume they inquired for a reason. So your typical agency will then put those on a newsletter rotation where once, twice, 3 times a month, they'll send a newsletter of stuff to them. And that typically is more product that the agency wants to sell in the hope that they will respond when they're ready and buy something. So that's the standard thing. Like you said, they're not really generating leads, but basically they're trying to convert more leads. There is a way of generating leads through a newsletter, but it's through not having your own mailing list. And this is something you'll know more about. And that is, there are some property portals and other outfits where you can pay them money to send your listing, your properties to their mailing list. And typically in a portal, we refer to that as a solus email, where you're kind of paying for them to send a newsletter to their mailing list for you. What's your experience with that?
Yeah, we get requests for solus emails a lot. We shy away from it mostly. We do them, but we shy away from it mostly because what the agent wants and what we want to achieve from our mailing list are two different things. And sometimes there's too much of a compromise to both parties. It can work. We've had great success in the past, but there's a lot of effort to create a newsletter that will genuinely be of service and use to the buyer's list and for the agent. And I think unless you can align those two things, it's either wasted money or you burn some of your reputation with the buyers. That's my personal feeling.
The intent comes from the fact, hopefully, that the place where you're paying to send it to their mailing list have got that intent. So it used to work quite well. It was quite expensive.
I think the industry, the online industry, has been waiting for email to die for the last 20 years. And our experience is it's still a high quality source of engagement. I think going back to all of the lead sources, once you've got a lead from somewhere, because of the low conversion rate, you need to continue to engage with that lead and work with them. And the easiest way is email. And actually, for the demographic that's buying in general, they're kind of my haircut or your haircut, they still use email.
In the old days of lead gen, we always knew that the easiest way of converting a lead was to match what the buyer wanted with how you were contacting them. And we kept on, you've probably tried this as well. We kept on trying to ask them at the point of generation, how would you like to be contacted? Phone, email, WhatsApp, whatever. And they always said email, and they never take the phone. And then that caused a problem, because if they did it, we asked them and they said they didn't want the phone, it means you couldn't really call them, because they were sort of saying, I told you I didn't want the phone. So whenever we tried that, we'd end up dropping that question and kind of going, I know you don't really want a phone call, but we kind of have to make a phone call. And that was probably the gray area of lead follow-up that we'll touch on that episode.
And I think WhatsApp is emerging as a sort of a halfway house, isn't it? It's on your phone. It's kind of it's a way of getting onto the device, but it's also asynchronous. You don't have to reply straight away. But yeah, from Kyero's point of view, we send out a general newsletter on Sunday. It's always our biggest traffic day. People get the newsletter. It's a list of properties. They click around. It works, I would say, as like you've said, as a way of staying engaged. And I mentioned Dean Jackson at the beginning. If you Google Dean Jackson 9-word email, you'll find this out. But as a way of re-engaging with people that you're not sure whether they're still interested or not, you can send a really short text email saying, hey, are you still looking for property in Marbella? And we've tried it in Kyero just to actually as a list cleansing process. And it's surprising the number of people that hold their hands up. So, oh yeah, keep me on the list. I'm still looking. So as a way of re-engaging with people, I think email is so non-threatening and so not in your face. It's kind of the sleeper way of re-engaging with people and nurturing that conversation.
And really the sales follow-up. There are agencies that do more calling than others. There are agencies that use WhatsApp more than others, but they all use email.
And last of all, we can't have a podcast episode without saying AI. So what about AI as a lead source? Is that a thing? Have you seen agents make a success of that? And if so, what are they doing?
I haven't, not yet, but it looks like it's inevitable and likely to happen.
The gray area right now is whether the engine actually makes a referral or just a suggestion. It's quite, depending on the engine that you're using, sometimes they link out to the source and sometimes they don't.
I think with all lead sources, perhaps my takeaway is that one thing agents should do better, can do better, and it isn't as hard as it sounds, is a buyer will hit multiple touch points along the process. And by default, if you attribute that sale to a lead source, you're likely to do it to the last touch point. So if they saw your billboard, then they went on Kyero, they had a look at a few properties, then they acquired, then they didn't answer your message, but then they sent you a newsletter and you responded to the newsletter and bought, the agent is going to say that came from my email marketing and not from Kyero and not from the billboard and not from the ad and not from the other stuff. And so being able to sort of keep a track as best as you can of the various touch points will allow you then to strategically make a better decision in terms of what lead sources are working for you. Because the most common thing I see is they pull everything except for the email thing, and then the whole thing collapses.
We've got a couple of agents that we deal with, the marketing guy, and we're kind of open book. And they've really shared with us the struggle of doing exactly that. So we just attribute it to the last touch point, but we know it's more complicated than that. It's just too hard to do.
It's not that hard to kind of attribute and to ask them, where did you hear from us? Did you see us on social? Did you watch any videos? Where did you first get into it? How do we get in touch with you? Those sort of things. In terms of being able to make a valuable ongoing strategy for an agency, the thing I find that surprises me to this day is there are still agencies that have been here 20, 30 years asking me, what about this? What about that? What about this? And I think, you don't know yet?
Well, I suppose human nature is to look for the next big thing and the magic bullet. And I guess that in summary, my takeaway with lead gen would be there is no silver bullet. And the overriding principle is intent. Look for intent in terms of lead quality.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever it is. If somebody says we've got a little dinner in Stockholm to try and get buyers for your thing, the intent question would be, why are they going to the dinner? Have you given them a free lunch? Or is it a property exhibition? Where is the agreement sent? That's a great point, Ryan.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I think we've done that one justice as well as we can, Alfredo. Next week, we're going to do a deep dive into portals. Clearly, I'll have something to say, but, how to pick a portal. What are the warning signs for a portal that you probably shouldn't give your money to? Just what about the sort of free portals and how'd you figure out the mix of portals in your lead gen thing? The following episode 4, we've got an SEO specialist coming in, and this is an agency we've worked with at Kyero. They know their stuff, so we're gonna talk to them about what works and what doesn't and what's changed. Episode 5, we're doing a deep dive into Google Ads and Meta, and the episode 6 is kind of pulling it all together and talking about follow up and what do you do with this pile of leads once you've got them. Thanks for your time, Alfredo. It's been great chatting again.
Thank you. It was another long one, but those of you who made it to the end, you get a free prize.